No, that's
Okay.
good. We could put a blanket or something over there.
They're not riding the horse.
There you go.
I see it.
I want them to don't go away.
You see all of my pushing.
You got me?
Oh, okay.
Maybe sometime before. We do just a little bit of business. It takes about 5 minutes.
Chief.
Which reminds me, somebody's got to get a piece of paper so we can put names.
Our secretary's report.
We're the sons of the sons of the
Lady Briggs, Doug Caldwell, Steve Proctor, and Mr. John Henry's there now.
Well, that's a different story, I'll tell you when we start.
Okay, so you go ahead and do what you would like to do, just do it and done. And then, we'll have a special program on GENE AUTRY presented by GENE AUTRY. It's really going to be exciting, so let's just enjoy it.
Well, Jimmy Glover is what I call the producer of this show. And Jimmy provides us with the music that we have. And unfortunately, Jimmy didn't realize, I think, it only has one line of notes on it. So we tried to put 4 parts for that. Now, we were fortunate, in Branson last week, we came back, Smiley Burnett was our piano player. Smiley's doing a good job. He really keeps us on track. So we're going to do For You Back in the Saddle Again, Home on the Range, and then Tumbling Tumbleweeds. Try it.
I'm back in the saddle again. Down where a friend is a friend. Where the Lord traveled me on a lonely gypsy beat. I'm back in the saddle again. Riding the range once more. Toting my old 44. When I sleep out every night, the only law is right. I'm back in the saddle again. Yippee-ki-yay, oh, rocking to and fro. Back in the saddle again. Yippee-ki-yay,
to see you, Mr. Biggs.
Nice seeing you. Thank you for coming.
kids growing up in the 40s and 50s, we kind of had to invent our entertainment. Not a whole lot to do, especially if you lived out in the country like I did. I lived out in the And in the summer, of course, you could go swimming. That was always a lot of fun. But probably what really made me feel better than anything was to go to town on Saturday, go to the movies. Go to the theater. And there was one theater here called the Ritz. Everybody remembers the Ritz. And they specialized in Westerns. On the weekend, you would always have a Western. And I would usually go with my grandparents, and they were big Western fans, and so that's where we wound up every Saturday night. I saw all the old big Westerns. And the difference in a B Western and an A Western, a B stands for budget. They were cheap. They were cheaply made, and they were geared towards the younger folks, you know, the kids. And so that's what we did every Saturday night. But I liked all the Cowboys. But there was one that just always stood out, and that was GENE Autry. I don't know what it was about him. It might have been his easygoing manner or his sincerity, or he was really a kind of a bashful and a timid fellow, and he came across in the movies. He was not overbearing. And I liked his singing. So he always was the one that I wanted to see. And of course, as I got on up in my teenage years and early 20s, I kind of forgot all that nonsense when I got married and went on, you know. And then one day I was going through a record rack at the old place out there now, Bert Kincaid. They used to have a big record store. I was coming through there and I saw this brand new album by GENE Autry just put out in 1962. And that kind of rekindled my past. And I thought, no, I think I'll buy this. So I did, and then I got a little more interested in it. And I was reading a paper, all these little periodicals come out about collecting, and this fellow was advertising for GENE Autry radio show. It was in New York. So I answered the ad, told him that I didn't have any, but I'd sure like to have some. So he was kind enough to send me some. And that was actually the first thing I started collecting was the old radio shows. Gene probably knows about the old reel-to-reel tape. And it was just a kind of steady progression. Every time I mentioned something to someone about a radio show, they'd say, well, do you have any of these movies? I said, no, I didn't know they were like this. And they said, yeah, some of these old film rental libraries show those things, and it might be something like that. And so I started looking for the movies, and then I finally found one. Later on, I found out he made 89 movies. So I had a ways to go. And I still don't have all of them. I'm talking on 16 millimeter, you know, the kind that they could show. I have 85, and then he made 91 TV shows, and I have 87 of those. So I'm closing in, but it's really a hard go. Some of them came all the way from England. But I've put together a little short DVD here of just some people, some of the old Cowboys that I wanted to see how many people remember. And it only runs about 6 or 7 minutes. But it's got some of the people in here that Faye and I have met at different film festivals, and I'll see how many you remember. That first guy was Sunset Carson. This is Pat Buster
Oh, yeah.
and Faye.
She hadn't changed a bit.
This fellow's name is Jock Mahoney. He played Tarzan and he played a lot of Western movies. This fellow is Ray Whitley. He is the one that actually wrote the theme song back in the South. This guy is Iron Eyes Cody. A lot of people remember him for that commercial with a tear in his eye with pollution. But he was in almost every Western movie ever made. That's Anita Carter, June Carter's sister, and that's Bob Luke and Johnny Cash, the lead guitar player. And there's 3 Gene Autry guitars there. This is inside Johnny Cash's house. We went over there one morning. I was a good friend of his guitar player, Bob Luke. This is at Gene's home in Hollywood, California, and this is a 55 Thunderbird. It looks like it just came off the assembly line. That's an old cowboy by the name of Red Berry, Don Berry. Don Red Berry. He got his nickname playing Red Rock. This is the guy who played on Ren 1010 on TV. He was the father. That's another video. This is Johnny Bond. He was Gene's lead guitar player and played on his show and in his movies. Everybody knows one of the little rascals, Spanky McFarland, on the right. And that's Bob Wooten, Johnny Cash's lead guitar player. That's Rex Allen. Anybody remember Lash LaRue with a whip? That's Lash LaRue. We see him just about every year. Everybody knows Dale Evans. Roy Roberts. There's Gene. This was the grand opening of his museum. Bob Steele. Y'all see that? That's Jane Withers. She was a child star, and for several years she was on those commercials, Josie the Plumber. Remember that? That's the most famous stuntman in Hollywood. His name is Yakima Canuck. He's an Indian, and he devised all the stunts. He did the choreography for the chariot race in Ben Hur. That's Peggy Stewart. She's the leading lady in a lot of the westerns. It's another old singing cowboy, Eddie Dean. He wrote the song Guilty to Heaven. I think most everybody knows Play the Boy with Lone Ranger. That was a female star in a lot of the movies. She was also a yodeler. Her name was Carolina Cotton. This is Jimmy Wakely. Here's one of his posters right here. That's Gail Davis. She played Annie Oakley on TV for several years. That's one of Gene Autry's saddles that was taken in his office. That's one of his shirts that was taken at Gene Autry Museum down at the bottom, downstairs. where only Charlotte and Wade and a few select people come.
Thanks to Jimmy Glover.
And Mac. This is Fred, and that was Fred Martin, one of the Cass County boys that sang with Gene. This is Gene and his wife, and along with Frank and myself, get one of the next positions out there. This, I'm presenting Gene with a pair of GENE AUTRY socks. He had never seen him. And he was sticking to death, and he put those in his museum. This is the last time we were with him, and we were his guests in his private box at one of the Angels games. Charles Sterling, the Rainbow Kid. Everybody remember the Rainbow Kid? Kirby Grant, Sky King. That's a TV show that back in the 50s.
Who's that with him?
This is Luke DeWitt of the Statler Brothers. He and I are really good friends. He was a big GENE AUTRY fan and director too, and that's the way we got to know each other. It's Luke with Faith. That's Harold, bass singer for the Statlers. That's Phil, another one of the Statlers. They still go to all of the Western film festivals. They're big fans of the Western. Ben Johnson, most everybody knows Ben. Remember the movie Shane? He's the one that got in a pretty good fight. That is the coat that Clark Gable wore at Gone with the Wind. I don't look like it. And this is Stuart Hampton, one of my heroes. One of what he wrote, "It is no secret what God can do in this whole house." He wrote some of the most beautiful songs ever written, I guess. I have just a short biography here. A lot of people don't realize. And if, you know, if they're in the process of writing his autobiography, his biography, it's going to be about this thick. And it's due out next year because that would have been his 100th birthday. He was born in 1907. And, but he was born in Tioga, Texas, and he was raised in Texas and Oklahoma, and he was discovered by humorist Will Rogers. And in 1929, he was billed as Oklahoma's yodeling cowboy at KV00 in Texas. And he gained a popular following, a recording contract with Columbia Records in 1929, and soon after performed on the national barn dance for radio station WLS in Chicago. Anybody know what WLS stands for? World's largest store. It was Sears. Sears on the radio station. And he first appeared on screen in 1934, and his last appearance on screen was 1953. And he starred in 93 feature films, and like I said, 91 TV shows. In 1940, the Theater Exhibitors of America voted Autry the 4th biggest box office star. And this is Western and All Stars, right behind Mickey Rooney, Clark Gable, and Spencer Tracy. And no Western star had ever reached that height. He made 635 recordings, and 300 or more of those he wrote. And his records sold more than 100 million copies. And he has more than a dozen gold and platinum records and including the first record ever certified gold. Does anybody know what the very first gold record was?
Rudolph the Red.
Very first one. Way before Rudolph. Think back now in the 30s. First gold record, if y'all ever have a trivia question, they do, was that silver-haired Danny man.
What was it? What was that, Jimmy?
That silver-haired Danny.
Sing it.
But he also had the second largest selling song of all time, which was Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. The number one all time in number of sales is White Christmas. I don't think anybody will ever surpass that, but Rudolph has sold over 30 million.
Hey, Jim, you know, he came, later he came back with Silver-Haired Mother of Mine, too.
Yeah.
It never was as popular as Silver-Haired Daddy, but it was popular.
Now, Johnny Marks wrote Rudolph and Gene. So he made it a hit. From 1940 to 1956, everybody listened to the Melody Ranks radio show. And it was unique in that wherever he was, if he was out on a personal appearance tour or whatever, he would go to the local CBS affiliate and do the show live. So we never had any canned music. It was always fresh and live. And he had the same sponsor, Government Gun, through all those years. And let's see. Somewhere it tells about he's the only star that he's the only entertainer to have all 5 stars on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. And there's 1 star each for radio, recording, motion pictures, television, and live performance. And there's a real strict criteria to get one of those stars, and he's the only performer with 5. And there's only one other that has 4, and that's Gene Kelly. But everybody else has 1, 2, or 3, even the ones that still perform today. So that's just kind of an overview of a few of the things that he had done. And I mentioned that Will Rogers is one, every star gives credit to someone for discovering them, And in Gene's case, it was Will Rogers. And Will was one of these guys that the reporters always followed him around and trying to get a quote from him. And just anything that he would say would be instantly put on the radio, put in the paper because he was just that popular. Well, he had a few quotes, and I thought I'd read a few of these from Will Rogers. Never slap a man who's chewing tobacco. Think about that. Never kick a cow chip on a hot day. Country boys around here, they'll know. There are two theories to argue with a woman. Neither one works. Never miss a good chance to shut up. Always drink upstream from the herd. If you find yourself in a hole, stop digging. The quickest way to double your money is to fold it and put it back in your pocket. This is one I kind of like. After eating an entire bull, a mountain lion felt so good he started roaring. He kept it up until a hunter came along and shot him. The moral? When you pull a bull to keep your mouth shut. And a couple of things he said about growing old. He said, you're getting old when everything either dries up or leaks. long ago when men cursed and beat the ground with sticks, it was called witchcraft. Today it's called God. And finally he said, if you don't learn to laugh at trouble, you won't have anything to laugh at when you grow old. That's pretty true. But that's just a few things from Will Rogers. He was a pretty funny guy. Faye and I have really enjoyed this hobby, and one reason is because of all the people we've been able to meet. We've got friends in just about every state in the union, and we still go to several festivals each year. We go to about 4 or 5 right now, and we'll be going to Asheville, North Carolina in another month or so. But we just met so many people, and they're all really nice people. It seems like this, everybody got different hobbies, but everybody in this hobby that we meet just seems to be extremely nice. And that's one reason we've enjoyed it, not because of the stars, but because of the fans, that we meet on each trip. When I started collecting, I really went at it really hard. I put a lot in it. I was serious about it. And I was in Memphis one time. I was in Memphis, and there was a dealer up there. It was a big film festival. And all the dealers had the tables of Western memorabilia around. And I looked over there and I saw this guy that he was just coming in beginning to set up, and he brought out a poster that I knew immediately what it was worth, how rare it was. It was called the Phantom Empire. And it was, excuse me, kick my throat. But what it was the poster to the serial that Gene made, the 15-chapter serial called The Phantom Empire. And it's one of it is his most highly sought after poster. So the guy had about, I think he had about $1,000. Now, you got to remember, this is about the mid-70s. A lot of money in the mid-70s. I was able to talk him down to $700. And I bought it. Which is still a pretty good sum for a little country boy to be chilling out that poster. So I bought it, and I took the thing to the car and locked it up right then. The next morning, I got up and I went outside and got the paper, the Memphis Commercial Appeal. There I was, splattered all over the paper. And I had bought this poster, how much, how rare it was, how much I paid for it, everything. And I said, oh my goodness, I better call Faye and get this off. So I called her and I said, I bought this poster. She said, oh, okay. I said, yeah, but I think I need to tell you, it cost $700. And I could hear a long silence there. And then she called her breath. I won't tell you what all she said. She was not too happy with it. But it just so happened that Wade Riggs was in Memphis at this time. And he was with a friend of his. And they read the same story. And it just backed up what I had been thinking. It was going to get back to Faye.
Well, I didn't know.
No, you didn't. But that's just one of the little humorous things. And I had tried for years to find a Gene Autry bicycle. Hoppy had a bike, and Gene Autry had a bike. Roy didn't have a bike. He had everything else in the world, but didn't have a bike. So I had been trying to find one. I had put ads in a lot of the collectors' papers and the magazines and things, and every time one would show up, which was about once a year, the thing would be from $3,000 to $5,000. I said, I'm just not gonna pay that for it. So one day, at church, back before we started going to this church, we were in Rosedale. And there was a little boy that had, cerebral palsy. He couldn't talk well at all. It was really hard to understand him. He came up to me and he said, I know where Gene Autry is. I said, Gene, what do you say? He said, I know where Gene Autry is, right next door to mine. I said, no, you're talking about a hop-along casting. No, Gene Autry. I said, I don't believe you, Gene. He said, follow me home. I said, all right. So I did. Sure enough, the guy next door to him had a Gene Autry bike. Someone had found it in an old barn, and it just so happened that this guy was a body shop man, and he knew how to restore cars and bikes and anything like that. So he had the thing all disassembled, and he was going to restore it. And I asked him, I said, what are you going to do with this? And he said, I got a 6-year-old granddaughter, and I'm going to teach her how to ride. I said, oh, Lord. And I told him, I said, man, you got to use it to fix it. I said, don't do that. I said, I'd love to buy that from you. And so I had a $100 bill with him. And I offered it to him, and he said, nah, but she's expecting that bike. I said, well, how much do you have in it? He said, I got about $30 in it. I said, well, $100 will cover your expenses. But he wouldn't do it. He said, come back next week. I'll be finished with it, and I want you to see it. So I went back the next week, and he had finished with the bike, and it was beautiful. But I got to thinking on the way before I went over there, I said, he almost bid on that $100. So I'm going to put 2 bills in my pocket. So we were sitting there on the swing, and we were swinging. Mr. Martin knows the great job he's done with the bike. And I said, you still don't want to sell it? And he would sell it in a heartbeat, but his wife is the one that didn't want to sell it. Because little Susie knew about it. She was expecting it. So before his wife got out there, I pulled out those 2 bills, and I said, I bought 200 with him. He didn't say a word. He just looked over like that, just grabbed it. Put it in his pocket, and that was my key. I jumped up and I ran over and I got that bike, and I was running down the side. And I heard his wife come out the door just screaming. She saw me with the bike, and he was trying to console her, and he bought it, you know. And I opened that back door and swung that thing in it, and I burned rubber all the way around the house. Anyway, I got that bike for $200, and it was about, like I said, it was $55,000 bike. Those things don't come up every day. But I was wondering if anybody had any questions about the Gene.
Jim, I know you have a wonderful collection. Where do you stand among the collectors of Gene Autry memorabilia?
It sounds like I'm being bragging if I said anything about it, but there are a lot of Gene Autry collectors that kind of honed in on one facet of his career. Like, I collect the records, I'll get the news, I'll get the magazines, I'll get this and this. But I have done it, tried to do it all. And probably, I don't know of anyone that has a more complete collection than I do. Like I said, it sounds like a brag, but
When did you start? What did you start collecting? Did you buy the first?
when I was a kid, 8, 9, 10 years old, if I got a quarter, I'd go up to the record store and see if there was a new record by Gene Autry out. There was 2 people that I would collect records on, Gene Autry and, believe it or not, the Chuck Wagon Gang. Anybody remember the old Chuck Wagon? But I would buy his records then. And of course, the movies, you know, I always loved the movies, but like I mentioned before, it just kind of went by the wayside after I grew up until my interest was rekindled when I saw that record store. So probably late 20s, I'd say, or early 30s when I really got serious about
Not year.
it.
I said, you're talking about your age, not year.
Yeah, my late 30s.
You can get her later.
Yeah, I was born in 1940.
I just wanted to mention how big a fan Jimmy is, and also how close he is to the family of GENE AUTRY. I happened to be over there in December. He and I were on the computer. They went to the door. He said, "What was that?" And it was a candy, box of candy, GENE AUTRY's wife.
Yeah, they've been, Gene and Jackie used to send the box every year. And after Gene died, Jackie used to continue to do that. You'll find, wait.
I got to tell you something about that visit to the museum you talked about earlier. We were all in California, John, Youngman, Max, Sally, Faye and Jimmy. Anybody else there? Charles. Jimmy said, we flew out and Jimmy and Faye drove out and he said,
They beat us.
they beat us out there, right? We saw them as we passed over. Jimmy said, go to the GENE AUTRY Museum and we would be shown around. So we did that. And when we went in, the guy that met us, I'm not sure who it was, Jimmy made it. He wasn't the head guy, he was
I think it's head of security.
I think so. Anyway, he said, and Jimmy's president there, he said he was told that the head guy who was the curator, that don't ask this guy any questions. Don't pretend that you know more than he does, but he knows more about GENE AUTRY's collection than anybody in there. But anyway, the bottom line of that, as you said a while ago, Jimmy got us down in we call it, right?
It's down in the restricted area where you don't.
Nobody's supposed to go down there, so we were allowed to go down in the restricted area. Because of him, maybe we would get it. And by the way, was there too. But we appreciate that, still listening.
Going north on I-35 from Texas to Oklahoma City, there's a sign that says there's a GENE AUTRY museum. Is that where he was raised?
No, that is there was a town that back in 1940, this town voted to change their name to GENE AUTRY.
Oh, okay.
Because he had a ranch there. And it was Berwyn, B-E-R-W-Y-N. And they voted to change their name. That was in 1940. There is a big museum, there's a big GENE AUTRY museum there. But the one
I haven't been, but I've seen the sign.
the museum that I was talking about is now, it's been under about 4 different names. They keep changing the name of it, but it's now called the Autry National Western Museum. And it's the largest of its kind in the world. The building itself was almost $75 million to build the building. And then there was hundreds of millions of artifacts that went in the museum. And it's in Griffith Park. It's right off of Interstate 5, Golden State Freeway there in Los Angeles. So it's not a GENE AUTRY museum in the sense that Roy Rogers was a Roy Rogers museum. Roy's museum was just about his family. It's strictly a personal family museum. But Gene's museum encompasses the whole West and the origin of the Western way of life from the conquistadors on up. So it's the largest museum of its kind in existence. So if anybody's ever out that way, it's well worth seeing. Okay.
Is GENE AUTRY a Southern Baptist?
Yes, as a matter years old. And that's where he got his formal singing teaching. Gene Autry, this is his real name. His first name is Orvon, O-R-V-O-N, which he never used. Roy Rogers' real name was Leonard Slide, S-L-Y.
Jim, you know who also was a big inspiration on Gene Autry and his music?
Well, you probably
In
talking
fact,
Jimmy Rogers because he tried to sound like Jimmy Rogers. All the people that were breaking into music during that time in the late 20s tried to emulate Jimmy Rogers.
You know, Jimmy Rogers' wife let Gene Autry have his guitar. You remember that?
Yeah.
I read that word. He was a big inspiration, and after Jimmy died, they were close friends, I think, so his wife said, we want you to have that guitar.
Of course, Gene had several, and one of them is in Country Music Hall of Fame in Nashville. There's 2 or 3 in his museum out there, and I think there's one in the Cowboy Hall of Fame in Oklahoma. Hey, any other questions?
Did you ever see the Gene Autry rodeo?
I did. As a matter of fact, it was in 1947. And he was at the fairgrounds. And my daddy took me to that rodeo. And the one thing, there's 2 or 3 things that really stick out in my mind about that rodeo. One, he had trained his horse to fall over and act like he was hurt. And back then, you know, if a horse broke a leg, he was shot. So he would start singing this song called Old Faithful about his horse. And he'd walk around with that gun, you know, and singing Old Faithful. And everybody in the stand, he's not going to do it. He's not going to do it. Is he going to shoot it? But that was part of the show. And when he got through singing, of course, horse would jump up. But the other thing that I remember about it was at the end of the show, he would ride all the way around with his hat off and a gallop all the way around the ring. And then there was a gate that he was going out over. But before he'd get there, he'd stop and he'd get up and let the kids, they were all leaning over the rail, you know, trying to pet the horse, trying to touch him. And he saw one little old kid back there that was crying because he didn't get to touch the horse. So instead of going out, he backed all the way back the horse up there and moved it over so that the kid would be there. That really made an impression on me.
Tell us how much these are valued.
Oh, now that one's pretty good, little thing, but these are anywhere from, $50 to a couple of hundred, depending on the condition. I don't have any pound empire, I didn't bring that close. It's valued now at $5,000. The one I paid $700 for, I got the last layer. That one over there is about
Tell me if you can sell it.
What about the bike?
what?
The bike?
The bike, it's around 5,000. Well, I'm about to run late, Tom.
Hey, Jimmy, I'll say one thing, we went by that Oklahoma museum, or that Oklahoma place, and they do know you out there.
That's it, Gene Autry, Oklahoma.
Gene Autry, Oklahoma.
That's all you got to do.
I go and mention your name, do I get special treatment?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah, they won't run you off.
They charge you double.
Thank you, Judy. In just a minute, I think Lonnie's going to give us some instructions about how to not run over each other to get in line.
They used to also sent you a song. Me and my brother Young and I, we sat down.
That's fantastic.
Got it? Do it again. Get the gun. Wait a minute, let me get my bullet
Now
out.
that, yeah.
Let me get my bullet out.
Oh, get your bullet out.
Got my bullet.
You're so crazy.
It's all right, it's tough.
You like Barney Fife, you get one bullet?
One bullet. I got one bullet right there. I got it.
That used to be an old saying. God created man as a color.
That's good. Yes, sir. That helps him to remember what some of the things he has in his collection.
Enjoy your stay. Yeah, you did well today.
Well,